On today's show, we're going to go through the questions that this year we think are going to define the Western Conference. Is Wemby going to take a leap forward? How's Kevin Durant going to fit with the Houston Rockets? We'll talk about all that and so much more on today's edition of Locked On NBA Game Night.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham, and you might know me from Locked On Cavs, and you might know my partner Swipa from Locked On Nuggets. And we want to say thank you to you for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. And if you're watching us on YouTube as we get started, do us a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for us, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any content from us. Of course, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And on last week's show, Swipa, we had a couple of questions that we thought would define the NBA, but as I was thinking back on it, both of those questions pertain to Eastern Conference teams. So I put together a few questions today that are more specifically about Western Conference teams that will define their seasons and really the entire shape of the Western Conference. And the one that I wanted to start with today has to do with the guy who is not currently the best player in the Western Conference, but I think we probably agree has a chance to be at some point in the not too far off future the best player in the Western Conference, and that would be Victor Wembanyama. And the question that I've got for San Antonio and for him is, what exactly does that leap look like in year 3 of Wemby?
So it's a really interesting question. You know, I've had a lot of conversations with people about Victor Wembanyama, and I would say that there is a very split opinion on just how good he is and how impactful he is. You know, when I did my own rankings for this season, based on level of play, this was not based on who completed the season. I think Wemby reached the height playing like the 4th best player in the sport this year. And the reason I said that is because if you look at Wemby's season, especially like the stretches he had stretches basically of 30 games where his scoring in the 46 games he played, like basically once he got past that first part of the year, his scoring was phenomenal. Like, he was shooting almost 10 threes a game, and he was hitting about 39% of them. He was averaging 4 blocks a game. He was averaging 1 steal a game. And then he was doing this, if you check Synergy, he was also just as effective as a jump shooter on the season in terms of an accuracy on volume standpoint as Jason Tatum was. And I think Wemby has this misunderstanding, I think, because a lot of people are like, well, why didn't he take more post shots? You know, why isn't he taking more hook shots? Why isn't he doing this and that? And I think Wemby is like developing his game. He is a true demagogue in an era where bigs are having to be very multi-skilled in order to be effective. You know, obviously Jokic is, you know, I think potentially the greatest offensive player ever, but a lot of that has to do with his passing, the playmaking, the scoring, the post control, post scoring, screening, offensive rebounding, all of that stuff. You know, when you look at like what's going on with Joel Embiid when he's healthy, he might be the best face up scoring big that we've ever seen in the league. Meaning when he turns and faces the basket, gets you in a triple threat, that over the top shot from 10 feet to 15 feet, which is the nail. And then his ability to be able to hit those shots at almost any rate, the pull ups, the headsies. I mean, you just haven't seen anything like it. You know, you watch like Domantas Sabonis, who I think is a very good player. The best year he had in his career, he was a 19, 12, and 7 player. And he was an all-NBA level player. You look at the way he screens and passes and offensive rebounds. And then I think you look at Anthony Davis, maybe the best finisher in the NBA, just an amazing lob threat, good post player, somebody who's really, when he's hitting that jumper, is a really difficult guard. I think Wemby is trying to fit in to this archetype of these like supremely talented, very skilled bigs who are very diverse in what they can do at different levels. Obviously, I think Sabonis is clearly the worst in terms of just skill-wise among all those bigs. But I think Wemby is just like a new generation kind of player. And I think that this is something that we're going to continue to see from him, just improving as a pull-up jump shooter. He'll figure out how to use more of his body as a post-control player as time goes on. But he's also like a good free throw shooter as well. So for someone who takes as many jumpers as he does, he's actually pretty efficient. I just think Wemby, man, is like his ceiling for me is easily the best in the world. A lot of that's going to come with IQ and time and how effective he gets as an offensive player, especially in a playoff setting, and his ability to kind of control what's happening. But I do think he still has a lot of stuff to shore up in order to get there, because it just so happens at the top of the league, it's just so like SGA, Giannis, Jokic, Luka, like those players are so obscenely good that he's going to have to really take several leaps to get there. But I think he can. But man, Wemby has a case to be like a truly once in a lifetime type of player.
He absolutely does. And one of the things that I'm most interested in with him is not necessarily how good he is this year, because I think it's fair to say we both have sky high expectations for him. You said that there could be a point, not this year, but in the near future where he's the number one player in the world and you don't have to think about it. And I agree with that sentiment. I think that he will get there at some point. I don't think it's going to be this year, but I do think he gets there at some point. But the thing that I'm most excited for with him is I do think that this year we're going to see him play in games that matter, because his first year in the league, the Spurs were not going anywhere. They weren't trying to go anywhere. Totally fine. This past year, the Spurs were better. They still weren't great. And obviously he had that health situation, very scary thing that cost him a good chunk of the season, like 40% of the season that he missed at the end. He didn't play really after the trade deadline. So with that, I do think that this year we are going to see him play in games that actually matter. And that is something that does excite me, because all of the stuff that he's done so far is great. But I do think it's a little easier to do it when you have the room to make mistakes, where the consequences of maybe not being great aren't as steep as if, this game actually counts. We need to win this game, or we're facing a big game with a potential tiebreaker on the line in the month of February. I'm excited to see him in those situations. I'm also excited to see how his expected improvement, his leap, if you will, is going to kind of put pressure on the Spurs to hit the gas a little bit. And it was easy for them to not need to win games last year when he was out, because you're not going anywhere without Victor Wembanyama. But I do think that they're going to have to be a young team that grows up this year. And I think a lot of that growing up is going to be because of Wemby, and that is something that excites me.
Yeah, I think that the Spurs are in a unique position where they're ahead of their timeline. They shouldn't be expected to win much of anything. But look, I've been raving about that lineup and the roster that they have for some time now. I think that De'Aaron Fox, if he's healthy this year, again, if his efficiency gets back to where it needs to be as a jump shooter, decision making, like I think he'll be very good next to Victor Wembanyama this year. I'm actually really excited to see kind of how they work out that two-man game. Last year, going into the season, I was telling people I was really high on how Chris Paul and Wemby will work together. Obviously De'Aaron's just a better player than Chris is at this point. I'm really excited to see how they kind of work out their chemistry. But then you got Devin Vassell stepping into another year. He's going to be really good as one of the trio scorers. Stephon Castle, excited to see what his development looks like. Offensively, he's still very behind, but he's defensively going to be extremely good. Then still got Harrison Barnes, Jeremy Sohan, obviously Mamu, Keldon Johnson, Champagnie. They have a lot of really good players on this roster. And I think you add Carter Bryant into that, you're talking about like a special defensive team. And then you also add obviously Dylan Harper. So they're going to be like, I think the Spurs, they're going to be pushing for 46, 45 wins. They may not get there due to the Western Conference being so good, but they're a team that legitimately could be saying, hey, like we're a top 7 seed already in the season, because in the regular season, we have the thing that you need, that Houston has, that OKC has, that makes you a great regular season team, which is an elite defense. So there's a very real possibility where they're soaring up the leaderboards in the Western Conference just because their team is uber talented. Maybe what if Dylan Harper's also that guy too? Like if Dylan is a real guy, that changes the formula for them in terms of when and how good they're going to be.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you before we move on to the Rockets and Kevin Durant. But what do you expect out of Dylan Harper this year? Because the Spurs were a team that I don't think went into last year expecting to pick inside the top 5 again, the way that they did. And a lot of that was impacted because Wemby missed so many games with the health issue that he had. But what do you expect out of Dylan Harper, who they grabbed at the top of the draft last year?
I mean, he's going to be a very good 6-man this year. I think that's about like what you can expect. And I mean very good as in like you're just not going to find a lot of guards that are coming off your bench that are this athletic, this dynamic, this good of a ball handler, this good of a driver, and has pull-up shooting opportunities. And Dylan Harper's not like he's not stout defensively yet because he hasn't even played an NBA minute. But having him be next to Wemby as a backline defender, and Dylan can use that athleticism to be a little bit more of a defensive playmaker. I'm excited to see like kind of how he works with De'Aaron Fox and how he works without De'Aaron Fox. Again, if Dylan is the way, then if anything for me, it just kind of like makes De'Aaron Fox like that much of a like we don't even necessarily need you to be elite, but we are for sure glad to have you because Dylan is the future guard of this team. So I think I like Dylan coming out of college. I think he can be really good with this team. I was shocked to see him be in a situation where he could start off with this good of a team, but I think that speaks to just the Spurs being able to cultivate talent, though. I think he can be really good.
Well, the Houston Rockets made what I thought was the splashiest move in the Western Conference. We're going to talk about how does Kevin Durant fit in as the season approaches in Houston. We'll do that next right here on Locked On NBA Game Night. But first, today's show brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade, and 5 Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors, with each 2-ounce shot packing the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients, and 0 sugar and 0 crashes. The no crash factor of 5 Hour Energy, one of the best parts of it, because maybe you need that caffeine boost. You're not feeling great. You get the caffeine that you need, and then 3 hours later, you feel worse than you did before. With 5 Hour Energy, that doesn't happen. Plus, one of the best things about 5 Hour Energy, how portable they are. They've got big taste in a tiny shot. You can take it anywhere and get that boost exactly when you need it. So enough with your boring, flavorless caffeine, because right now is the time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites you need and love, or be bold. Try something new. They've got 17 different flavors. You don't have to stick to the one flavor that you always get. Be a little adventurous with your caffeine. 5 Hour Energy has you covered with so many different great flavors. So try something new in store or online at 5hourenergy.com. That is the number 5, HOUR energy.com, or on Amazon today. Thank you again for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen today and every day. And you can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Please do that to help support the show. And the Houston Rockets, I think, made the flashiest or splashiest move this offseason, acquiring Kevin Durant in a trade from the Phoenix Suns. Out goes Dylan Brooks, out goes Jalen Green, in comes Kevin Durant. And the question I have here is, what does that acclimation process, or what does that integration process look like between the Rockets and Kevin Durant? Because in a Western Conference that is very, very good, I do think that the regular season is going to matter for them. And they're a team that I think seeding is going to be important when you've got a young team. You'd like to have home court advantage. And I just wonder, how long is it going to take for Kevin Durant and the Rockets to feel comfortable with each other on the floor?
Well, again, this integration process is going to be a little bit different because the Rockets already did not depend on very elite offensive scoring last year from any one of their players. Şengün was a negative efficiency player as a scorer. Jalen Green was a negative efficiency player as a scorer. Their best hope for like efficiency and over-the-top shooting was Fred VanVleet. Now they're adding in Kevin Durant, who is already like still one of the 6 or 7 best scorers in the league, if not even higher than that. And so then if you add that in with a elite pull-up shooting, off-the-block shooting, ISO shooting, can be a distributor playmaker as well. Like he's another ball handler you can add to your lineup. So for me, it's like he's actually settling into a situation where the Houston Rockets are going to be themselves. They're going to play very good defense. They're going to play aggressive defense. Amin Thompson's going to play swarming defense. The rim protection is going to be good. Şengün's going to be as mobile as you can imagine a big like that to be, which is pretty good. And then on top of that, you're adding Dorian Finney-Smith. You still have Torrey Eason. Jabari Smith is there. I mean, they're going to be a heavily defensively influenced team that now has like an elite ISO post scorer on their roster. And so integrating Kevin Durant is going to be about putting plays in to help him get free of the defensive attention that's going to be on him. And then how to help Şengün and Fred VanVleet and Amin, Torrey, and Reed Shepherd, how they can play off of Kevin Durant's gravity as a scorer. Because what's going to happen is, as teams overload on Kevin Durant, Şengün's going to have a lot more opportunity in the pocket of the defense. And what is the pocket of the defense? The pocket of the defense is going to be right in the center of the court, where between the 3-foot line, which is right in front of the rim, to that nail area, which is the free throw line. Şengün is going to be able to work that whole area with more space probably than he's ever had, just because of his gravity. Now, if you do decide that you want to double, well, doubling off of Kevin Durant with a box player like Şengün, and then on top of that, having Amin Thompson in the dunker spot, like, there's going to be so many different options for this team in terms of how they want to attack you offensively. So I'm actually really excited to kind of see how Ime Udoka builds an offense around Kevin Durant. But I will say this too, man. I think people are sleeping on this, Danny. The Rockets are going to be a better defensive team this year than they were last year, because Kevin Durant is one of the best rim protecting forwards in the sport. And then you add in the fact that you're taking your worst defender out of the lineup in Jalen Green. And then now you're saying Fred VanVleet, Amin Thompson, Jabari Smith, Kevin Durant, and Alperen Şengün, and then Torrey and Dorian coming off the bench with Steven Adams and Clint Capella, Reed Shepherd. Like, they're going to be like top 3 this year defensively. I mean, I could make an argument, Danny, that it's going to be them, the Clippers when they're fully healthy, and the Houston Rockets. Like, those are your 3 best defenses in the sport.
And the Thunder, you mean?
Yeah. The Thunder, and then the Clippers, and then the Houston Rockets. Those are probably the 3 best defenses.
So last year, to your point, Houston had the number 5 defense in basketball. They had a defensive rating of 110.3, which was just a shade behind the Boston Celtics. So I don't know that that's a huge leap forward, but I do think that their defense can become better this way. I do wonder how much losing Dylan Brooks's attitude will be something that impacts them more so in the locker room than on the floor, because I'm not the highest on Dylan Brooks as a basketball player. And one of the other things that I do think of with this situation, because I am incredibly high on Amin Thompson. I think that he probably never going to be the best player in the world, but I think he's somebody that has multiple top 5 MVP finishes in his career upcoming. And I think aside from the fact that the Rockets are just better on the floor with Kevin Durant than they were last year, like, they're just a better basketball team this year. I think that this move, while it's going to pay immediate dividends in terms of wins and losses and playoff success in all likelihood for Houston, I think in the long term, this is going to be one of the best things for Amin Thompson's career. Like, I do think that his development might become a little bit expedited, but being able to be around Kevin Durant, even if Kevin Durant is 37 years old and not in his prime, he's still really, really good. And I think that Thompson's going to be able to learn a lot from him. And this is a move that, like we both said, immediately helps them. But I also think it helps them even more in the long run.
Yeah, man. I mean, Amin Thompson is, I'm not sure where he would rank, in terms of athletic prowess in all-time NBA rankings, but he's a top 1% NBA athlete ever.
Oh, yeah.
So if you have a player like that is that dominant of a defender, and shout out to Asar, by the way, because people think like Asar's not right there with him. Asar defensively is also extremely good, but he just plays in Detroit. Amin Thompson, man, he specializes as an off-ball wing dude, but if he's able to like just develop a little bit more of the playmaking chops to him, and honestly, the player that, I mean, he should be turning into a little bit of Ben Simmons. And I don't know if people remember prime Ben Simmons, but Ben Simmons in his prime couldn't shoot worth a lick. Amin can't shoot either. But he's a better threat to shoot than Ben, because he'll actually take that shot. But Amin, if he works on his dribbling, he's never going to be the passer Ben. It's more than likely. But if he works on that like utilizing his handle and speed and power and being able to generate gravity as a passer because of what he's doing going towards the basket, I mean, he at least could make the Giannis leap, where Giannis was like, oh, wait, like, I'm bigger, faster, stronger than everybody. So when they collapse, I'm just going to throw the ball like across the court into the corner for an open 3-pointer. I think Amin Thompson, he should absolutely be able to really utilize Kevin Durant's gravity and floor spacing in a unique way. I'm really excited. I think there's a very real world where the Rockets could potentially have 3 All-Stars next year. I think there's a world where it happens. Now, it's going to take Amin taking a leap. It's going to take Şengün. I did not think Şengün should have been an All-Star last year. He got it because of the standings. I thought Sabonis should have been in that last spot, but Şengün, if what he did in Eurobasket is going to continue into the year, like 38% from 3, finishing better, and the defense, he'll absolutely be an All-Star. potentially all NBA next year, and then you add in Amin Thompson and Kevin Durant, yeah, they will have the formula that the Thunder did, which is 3 really, really elite players, and then an elite defense, and then all of a sudden they're in the Western Conference Finals.
I don't think that should be a surprise to anybody if they get there, but how quickly this happens, how quickly they all look comfortable with each other, I do think will be a regular season defining question for the Houston Rockets. Now, we've talked a lot about the LA Clippers because of stuff off the floor. We're going to talk a little bit about how that stuff off the floor could impact things on the floor. We'll do that next right here on Locked On NBA Game Night. But first, today's show brought to you by Monarch Money. Did you know that most people can't actually name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, right? Like they might have 401ks, properties, investments, some other stuff that you don't even know how much money you're worth. You don't know if you are or are not maximizing your value. And when you don't have that full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. And I promise you, nobody wants to leave money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money, because it is an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy to use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. And if you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. They do the heavy lifting for you, where you can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel like you're in control of your money without ever having to touch a spreadsheet. Maybe you can't identify what your home is worth. Maybe you don't know because it hasn't been on the market, but Monarch Money can help you there, and they can make sure that you are maximizing your value in every single area. They'll be the financial advisor that you need. So don't let this financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA, that is LOCKEDON NBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. Again, that is 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNBA. Thank you again for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen today and every day. If you're watching the show on YouTube, do us a favor, hit that thumbs up button for us and click subscribe to this channel. It's the best way you can help grow this show. And the LA Clippers, Swipa, have been in the news quite a bit over the last month because of the Kawhi Leonard, the ongoing scandal about maybe the Clippers have been circumventing the cap, and we don't know if they're going to be punished. We don't know when this investigation by the NBA is going to be wrapped up. We have no idea what all of this is going to lead to. But that leads me to this, is how is all of this going to impact what the team does on the floor? Because you mentioned them as a team that potentially has one of the best defenses in basketball. I agree. They had a fantastic finish to the season last year, and they have added some, albeit older, some solid pieces this offseason after they finished 18-3 in the end of the regular season, took the Denver Nuggets to 7 games in the first round of the playoffs last year. But how much do you think the dark cloud hanging over them because of this Kawhi Leonard saga is going to impact what actually happens on the hardwood this year for the Clippers?
At this point, I think it would just severely undermine Silver's credibility, because the NBA, Pablo Torres, the way that he has read the NBA rules is, if the NBA finds that there is evidence that seems to lean heavily in the favor that you in fact did circumvent the cap, there will be penalties. It doesn't even have to be proven 100% true, but if they find more than enough circumstantial evidence to at least say there's a lot of smoke for this fire, they can impose penalties based on their own rules. I think my issue is the NBA clearly wants this to go away, because they don't want to have to penalize the Clippers. They don't want to have to penalize an owner, the richest owner, by the way, in sports. They don't want to have to deal with the fallout and the ramifications, and the idea that, hey, you have, after you clean up the Donald Sterling issue, which, it's a whole separate thing with Adam Silver, you immediately get Steve Ballmer in the house to replace Donald Sterling. And then now you got to deal with Steve Ballmer. And I think for me, we have now had 3 iterations of the Pablo Torres story that will come out. And now we have found that I believe the number is over $200 million of invested money from Steve Ballmer into Aspirations. Plus all the stuff that I've already talked about on here with when Kawhi Leonard and Uncle Dennis, the payment was supposed to go through. So all of a sudden, their minority 1% owner gave a $1.99 million payment, and then 7 days later, there was a $1.75 million payment made out to Kawhi Leonard to KL2. Like, Danny, I mean, at some level, it's just like, what do they think that we're incompetent and we can't understand what it is we're seeing, or we're just going to pretend as if there's nothing happening? So, hey, whatever. Like, they were just, trying to invest $200+ million into a shoddy company with no work from Kawhi Leonard at all over the course of any time of this contract at all.
Yeah, none. And I do think it's important to denote that, one, the court of law is different than the court of NBA. And both of those things are also very different from the court of public opinion, because the court of public opinion, I think this case has been decided. I think most people that have listened to any basketball show, whether it's this one or whether it's been Pablo Torre's investigative work on his podcast, Pablo Torre Finds Out, I think most people that have listened to that have agreed, okay, yeah, the Clippers, maybe to what degree they did something wrong, I don't know, but I think most people can agree they did something wrong. And the thing that I just keep coming back to is this is a really good roster. They've got a lot of really good players. They added Chris Paul going into his 21st season. They added Bradley Beal going into his 14th season. Like, those are two good adds, despite the fact that those guys might not be in their prime anymore. James Harden might not be in his prime anymore, but he was an all-NBA player last year. He had a fantastic close to the season. Kawhi Leonard's still a really, really good player when he's on the floor. Ivica Zubac's a really, really good big man. They've got a really, really good roster. I think defensively they should be, as you mentioned in the previous segments, one of the best defensive teams in basketball. But I wonder if all of this is just not going to matter, because having to go through a season not knowing if there are going to be penalties that impact that season, and I would imagine that if and when Silver does penalize them, it's not going to have on the court effects this season. But I still think that could be something that just messes with that team a little bit and doesn't allow them to reach their ceiling as we might expect.
Yeah, I think that the NBA, something I heard was that they're going to await the entirety of this season before they hand out penalties to the Clippers, which I think is just so ridiculous. And if you're the Clippers, you don't want that hanging over your head. Like, all season, you got to worry about, what's gonna happen? Like, are we gonna have to void Kawhi Leonard's contract? Like, how many more draft picks are we losing? We already don't have any. Are we losing more after we get ours back? Like, what is the penalty for the team from a cap severity standpoint? Like, Danny, this is a big deal. Like, the NBA has to make an issue. Like, they have to make this a major issue and say, you didn't do what you were supposed to do within the agreement of all the NBA owners. You circumvented the cap. You paid a player, your best player, mind you. And also, we already have evidence that Kawhi was asking the Raptors and the Lakers for similar things. So the Clippers all of a sudden got him. And so they didn't capitulate to any of the demands that he very publicly made to the Raptors or to the Lakers. And they got him anyway. Like, I just think this whole thing is ridiculous. And like, I'm not saying that their Pablo story is 100% correct. But I am saying there's a lot of smoke around everything Pablo has reported. And at this point, I would be highly surprised if he is not proven to be right historically in the end.
I think you and I are in the same boat there. I would be surprised as well. And thank you for making today's show your first listen. You can find it anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. And if you're watching on YouTube as we get out of here, do us a favor, hit that thumbs up button for us, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On NBA content. We will be back tomorrow talking more about the NBA.